Chapter 1. The Unlikely Dreamer. Nandipa stood in front of the mirror in her small hut, her hands on her hips, glaring at her reflection. Her dream was simple, yet grand. She wanted to become the most famous fashion model in the world. But there was one problem. Everyone in her village of Umzima thought she was crazy. No one took her seriously. Why? Because Nandipa wasn't what the village called beautiful. She was short, with round cheeks, wide hips, and a soft belly that told the story of her love for the food she cooked. Nandipa wasn't the type of girl that fashion scouts in Paris or New York would look at twice, but she didn't care. She had spent years watching fashion shows on her uncle's small TV, mesmerized by the models who walked with such confidence and grace. They were tall, slim, and regal. Nandipa, not so much. But that never stopped her from practicing her walk on the village paths, pretending the dusty roads were glittering runways, and the sun overhead was the spotlight. The villagers, however, had other ideas for Nandipa. She had been making sweet potato tarts since she was a little girl, using her grandmother's secret recipe. Her tarts were legendary. So legendary, in fact, that the villagers relied on them for every celebration, every feast, every wedding. It wasn't just a dessert, it was tradition. "You've got magic hands, Nandipa," Auntie Zodwa would say while biting into a tart. "Why do you want to waste them on silly dreams of runways?" But it wasn't just Auntie Zodwa. The whole village thought Nandipa's dreams were laughable. "Who needs the runway when you've got the best tarts in the whole province?" they would say. "Stay here where you belong. The world needs your cooking, not your walk." Nandipa would nod politely and smile, but her heart would sink a little deeper each time. They couldn't see it. Her dream, her desire to be something more than just the village tart maker. But Nandipa saw it, and that was all that mattered. That night, as the stars glittered above her, Nandipa made a vow. She was going to make it, somehow, some way. Whether the villagers liked it or not, she was going to be on the most glamorous runways in the world. Chapter 2. The Unwanted Attention. Nandipa's runway dreams became a source of constant ridicule. Wherever she went, people whispered behind her back, "There goes Nandipa, the tart maker who thinks she's a model," they'd say with smirks. "Why don't you just stick to what you're good at?" said Zandile, the village's reigning beauty queen. Zandile had won the Miss Umzima pageant 3 years in a row and walked around like she owned the place. Her long, slim frame and perfect skin made her the favorite. Nandipa, on the other hand, was seen as a joke in comparison. "People come from all over to taste your tarts. What more do you need?" Zandile continued, her smile thin and condescending. Nandipa bit back her frustration. "I don't want to be known for just making tarts. I want more." "You? A model?" Zandile laughed. "Please, Nandipa. The only runway you belong on is the one in your kitchen." The mocking wasn't even the worst of it. The village council soon approached her with a proposition that made Nandipa feel even more trapped. They wanted her to start making sweet potato tarts for every festival in the region. "Your tarts are the pride of Umzima," said the village chief. "If we showcase them at every festival, our village will gain fame." Fame. The word echoed in Nandipa's mind. That was exactly what she wanted, but not like this. They didn't want Nandipa to be famous. They wanted her tarts to be famous. There was a difference, and it made her feel invisible. Despite the mounting pressure to give up her dreams, Nandipa persisted. Every evening after cooking, she would sneak away to the hills outside the village and practice her runway walk, balancing bowls of water on her head to perfect her posture. One evening, while she was practicing under the moonlight, she heard a rustle in the bushes. Startled, she turned around to find a strange woman watching her. The woman was unlike anyone Nandipa had ever seen, tall, with elegant clothes and bright red lipstick. "I've been watching you," the woman said, her voice smooth and confident. Nandipa froze. "Who are you?" I'm Masego, a fashion scout, she said, and I think you've got something special. Chapter 3. The Opportunity. Nandipa could hardly believe what she was hearing. A fashion scout? In Umzima? It felt like a dream, or maybe a cruel joke. She pinched herself just to be sure she wasn't imagining things. Masego's smile grew wider. I know what you're thinking. You're wondering what a fashion scout is doing in a small village like this. Nandipa nodded slowly. Well, darling, I've traveled the world looking for hidden talent, and here, in this little village, I find you. But I'm not, Nandipa started. Tall, skinny, conventionally beautiful? Masego finished for her. None of that matters. What matters is that you have something unique, something raw. I see it in you. Now, it's time for you to see it in yourself. Nandipa blinked in disbelief. You really think I could be a model? I don't think. I know, Masego said with a wink. But you'll have to work hard. The industry can be brutal. People will try to bring you down. You'll have to be tougher than you've ever been. Nandipa felt a surge of hope, but it was quickly followed by doubt. The villagers would never let her go. They needed her tarts for the upcoming festivals. And besides, who was she to think she could make it in a world so far beyond the village? I can't just leave, Nandipa said, shaking her head. My family needs me here. Masego leaned in closer, her voice soft yet firm. Sometimes, to follow your dreams, you have to leave behind the people who are holding you back. I'll be in Johannesburg for a week. If you change your mind, come find me. With that, Masego turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Nandipa standing alone with her thoughts. For the first time, someone outside of Umzima believed in her. But was she brave enough to take the leap? Chapter 4. The Village Strikes Back. The next morning, Nandipa woke up with a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling in her stomach. Masego's words echoed in her mind. You have something special. Now it's time for you to see it in yourself. But just as quickly as the excitement rose, so did the fear. She knew what the village would say if she told them about the opportunity. They would laugh, scoff, and remind her that her place was in the kitchen, not on some glamorous runway. But how long could she continue living her life for others, making sweet potato tarts while her heart longed for more? When she arrived at the market later that day to sell her tarts, she heard the whispers. The news of Masego's visit had spread. I heard that fashion scout is looking for a model, said one woman, her voice dripping with envy. I bet Zandile is the one she'll pick. No one else in this village is even close to being model material. Nandipa clenched her fists, trying to keep her emotions in check. Zandile had overheard the conversation and sauntered over, her perfect smile in place. Oh, Nandipa, Zandile began, her voice syrupy sweet. I'm sure that scout was just being polite when she spoke to you. You know how people can be, saying nice things just to avoid hurting someone's feelings. Nandipa's face burned with frustration. She had to bite her tongue to stop herself from lashing out. Instead, she forced a smile. Well, maybe she saw something in me that others don't. Zandile's laughter cut through the market like a sharp blade. Please, Nandipa, stick to your tarts. Nandipa walked away, her heart heavy. How could she ever follow her dreams when everyone around her thought she was a joke? But later that night, as she lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, something inside her shifted. She realized that if she didn't take this chance, she would regret it for the rest of her life. The next morning, she packed her bags. Chapter 5. Leaving Umzima. Nandipa woke early, before the village was stirring, her eagerness mounting as she packed her bags. She didn't bring much, just a few clothes, a small jar of her grandmother's sweet potato tart spice mix, and enough money for a bus ticket to Johannesburg. The weight of her decision sat heavy on her shoulders. Leaving Umzima wasn't just about following her dream. It was about walking away from the life that everyone expected her to live. She glanced around her small hut one last time before slipping out into the dawn, her feet barely making a sound on the dirt paths. As she walked through the village, the first light of the sun crept over the horizon. The village was still asleep. She hadn't told anyone she was leaving, not even her family. She knew they would try to stop her, or worse, guilt her into staying with talk of duty and tradition. At the edge of the village, Nandipa paused. Her heart was racing. She looked back one last time, her gaze sweeping over the familiar huts, the old well in the center of the village square, and the distant hills. This was her home. It always had been, but it wasn't enough anymore. She took a deep breath, turned away from the village, and started down the road. The path ahead was uncertain, but Nandipa knew one thing for sure. She was going to Johannesburg, and she was going to chase her dream, no matter what. Chapter 6. The Big City. Johannesburg was overwhelming from the moment Nandipa stepped off the bus. The noise, the people, the towering buildings, it was a far cry from the quiet life of Umzima. She clutched her bag tightly, trying to steady her nerves. She had never been to a city this big before, and the scale of it all made her feel small and insignificant. But she couldn't let herself be intimidated. She had come here for a reason, and she wasn't about to let the fear of the unknown hold her back. Her first task was to find Masego. She didn't have an address, but she remembered Masego had said she would be staying in the city for a week. With a deep breath, Nandipa headed towards the city center, hoping to find some trace of the mysterious fashion scout. Hours passed as she walked through the bustling streets, asking strangers if they had heard of Masego or if they knew where fashion scouts might be found. Most people shook their heads, but a few mentioned a fashion studio in the heart of the city where scouts and designers often gathered. Nandipa felt a flicker of hope. She hurried to the studio, her heart pounding with anticipation. When she arrived, she was met with a sleek, modern building, its glass walls reflecting the city around it. She hesitated for a moment before pushing open the doors. Inside, the atmosphere was buzzing with energy. Models were walking up and down the runway. Designers were frantically working on their latest creations, and photographers snapped pictures from every angle. Nandipa felt out of place in her simple village clothes, but she kept her head high and approached the receptionist. "I'm looking for Masego," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The receptionist raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything as she picked up the phone. After a brief conversation, she pointed towards the back of the studio. "Masego's in the fitting room. You can go through." Nandipa's heart raced as she walked through the bustling studio towards the fitting rooms. She pushed open the door and found Masego standing in front of a full-length mirror, adjusting a model's dress. Masego turned and smiled when she saw Nandipa. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, her voice warm. "I'm ready," Nandipa replied, her voice firm with determination. "I want to be a model." Masego studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Good. Let's get to work." Chapter 7. The Audition. The next few days were a whirlwind. Masego wasted no time in throwing Nandipa into the deep end. She arranged for Nandipa to attend her first audition at a local fashion show. The stakes were high, and the pressure was even higher. Nandipa felt completely out of her depth, surrounded by tall, slim models who seemed born to walk the runway. "Don't worry about them," Masego told her before the audition. "You've got something they don't. Just focus on that." Nandipa wasn't sure what Masego saw in her, but she trusted her. When her turn came to walk, she took a deep breath and stepped onto the runway. The lights were blinding, and the eyes of the judges felt like they were burning into her. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her head high and focused on her walk. The audition wasn't perfect. Nandipa could feel the nerves in her legs, and her walk was stiffer than she would have liked. When it was over, The judges exchanged glances, but said nothing. Masego didn't seem fazed. "You did well," Masego said as they left the audition, "but you've got a long way to go." Nandipa nodded. She knew this was just the beginning. Chapter 8. The First Taste of Success. Despite her nerves, Nandipa's performance at the audition caught the eye of a small, independent designer. He liked her confidence and her unique look, and he offered her a spot in his upcoming show. It wasn't a big break, but it was a start. The next few weeks were grueling. Nandipa trained relentlessly, working on her walk, her posture, and her confidence. Masego was a tough mentor, pushing her to the limit and refusing to let her settle for anything less than perfection. The day of the fashion show arrived, and Nandipa was both excited and terrified. This was her first real chance to prove herself. As she stepped onto the runway, she felt a surge of adrenaline. The lights, the cameras, the crowd. It was everything she had dreamed of. She walked with confidence, her head high, her movements fluid and graceful. For the first time, she felt like she belonged on the runway. When the show was over, Nandipa was met with applause. The designer was pleased, and Masego gave her a rare smile of approval. It was a small victory, but it felt like a huge step forward. Chapter 9. A Call from Home. Just as things were starting to go well for Nandipa, she received a call from her village. Her aunt, Auntie Zodwa, had fallen ill, and the family needed her to come back to Umzima to help with the household, and of course, to make the sweet potato tarts for the upcoming harvest festival. Nandipa felt torn. She had worked so hard to get this far, but her family needed her. She couldn't just abandon them, could she? Masego noticed the change in Nandipa's mood. "What's going on?" she asked. Nandipa explained the situation, expecting Masego to tell her to stay and focus on her career. But to her surprise, Masego nodded thoughtfully. "You can go back if you want," Masego said. "But if you do, you need to make a decision. You can't be half in and half out. Either you're committed to this dream or you're not." The words weighed heavily on Nandipa's heart. She knew Masego was right. If she went back to the village, she might never come back to the city. The pull of home and tradition could be too strong to resist. But how could she turn her back on her family? Chapter 10. The Return to Umzima. After days of internal struggle, Nandipa made the difficult decision to return to Umzima. Temporarily, she told herself. She would help her family, but she wouldn't let the village keep her there. This was just a detour, not the end of her journey. When she arrived in Umzima, the villagers welcomed her with open arms, but there was an undercurrent of smugness in their smiles. They assumed she had come back for good, that the city had chewed her up and spit her out, and now she was back where she belonged. "You've returned to your senses," Auntie Zodwa said with a weak smile from her sickbed. "The city isn't for girls like us, Nandipa. We belong here." Nandipa helped around the house and made the sweet potato tarts for the festival, but her heart wasn't in it. She felt like she was living someone else's life. The village, once a place of comfort, now felt suffocating. The festival came and went, and Nandipa found herself standing at a crossroads once again. The villagers expected her to stay, but her dream was calling her back to the city. Chapter 11. The Unexpected Opportunity. Just when Nandipa was about to lose hope, an unexpected opportunity presented itself. One of the guests at the Harvest Festival was a wealthy businesswoman from the city who owned a chain of restaurants. She tasted Nandipa's sweet potato tarts and was blown away. "These are incredible," the woman exclaimed. "I've never tasted anything like this. Have you ever thought about selling these in the city?" Nandipa's mind raced. This was it, a way to bridge the gap between her village life and her dreams. She could make her tarts and still pursue her modeling career. The businesswoman offered to help Nandipa open a bakery in Johannesburg, where Nandipa could sell her famous sweet potato tarts. In exchange, Nandipa would be in charge of the recipes and production, ensuring that the quality remained as high as it was in the village. The woman's business connections would take care of the rest. Nandipa couldn't believe it. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for, a way to pursue her dream of modeling while still honoring her roots and the village's legacy of sweet potato tarts. But there was a catch. She would need to return to Johannesburg immediately to start planning, and that meant leaving the village again, just as everyone was starting to believe she had finally come to her senses. Chapter 12. The Decision. Nandipa spent the night thinking over the businesswoman's offer. It was tempting, but it also felt like she was being pulled in two directions. If she went back to the city, would she be able to juggle both the bakery and her modeling career? Would the villagers understand, or would they see it as another betrayal? The next morning, Nandipa made her decision. She sat with Auntie Zodwa and explained everything. Auntie, I love this village. I love our traditions, but I have a chance to do something bigger than just make tarts here. I can share our heritage with the world and still follow my dream. Auntie Zodwa sighed. You've always had big dreams, Nandipa. Maybe it's time to follow them. With her aunt's blessing, Nandipa packed her bags once again. This time, though, she wasn't just chasing a dream. She was creating something new, a fusion of her past and her future. Chapter 13. The Sweet Potato Empire. Back in Johannesburg, Nandipa hit the ground running. She partnered with the businesswoman and opened Nandipa's Sweet Potato Delights, a small bakery in the heart of the city. The bakery quickly gained a following, with lines of customers eager to try her famous tarts. Word spread fast, and soon her tarts were being sold in cafes and restaurants across the city. But Nandipa didn't stop there. She made sure to set aside time for her modeling career too. With Masego's help, she began landing more auditions and runway shows. Her confidence grew with each show, and soon she was being noticed, not just for her tarts, but for her unique look and presence on the runway. The bakery became a hub for foodies, fashion enthusiasts, and media personalities alike. People loved the story behind the brand. The small village girl who came to the big city to chase her dreams, balancing her heritage and her ambitions. As her fame grew, so did the bakery. Nandipa expanded her menu, adding more traditional village recipes, and even started selling her grandmother's famous spice mix. But no matter how big the bakery grew, Nandipa never lost sight of her original dream. Chapter 14. The Model with a Mission. Nandipa's unique path, baking by day and modeling by night, caught the attention of the fashion world. She became known as the model with a mission, and her story inspired young women from small towns and villages across the country. She started getting invitations to bigger runway shows, and soon she was working for some of the most renowned designers in South Africa. But it wasn't just her modeling skills that were turning heads. It was her commitment to staying true to herself, even in an industry that often pressured women to fit into a narrow mold. Nandipa refused to lose her identity, and that authenticity made her stand out in a sea of uniform beauty. As her modeling career blossomed, she used her platform to talk about her journey, emphasizing the importance of self-belief and embracing one's roots. She became a role model not just for aspiring models, but for anyone with a dream that seemed out of reach. Chapter 15. The Village Comes Calling. Months passed and Nandipa's fame continued to grow. Her bakery was thriving and her face was appearing in magazines and on billboards. But with success came new challenges. The village of Umzima, once dismissive of her dreams, began to reach out, asking for favors. The same villagers who had mocked her now wanted her to return to help with festivals, to promote the village, or to contribute financially to local causes. Nandipa felt conflicted. On the one hand, Umzima was her home, and she owed much of her success to the lessons she had learned there. On the other hand, she couldn't help but remember how they had laughed at her and dismissed her dreams. She didn't want to abandon her roots, but she also didn't want to be taken advantage of. One day, she received a letter from the village chief, asking her to come back for a special ceremony in her honor. They wanted to celebrate her success and officially name her the Pride of Umzima. It was a recognition she had never expected, and the gesture was genuine, but still, she hesitated. Chapter 16. Returning as a Hero. After much deliberation, Nandipa decided to return to Umzima for the ceremony. This time, she wasn't coming back as a failed dreamer. She was returning as someone who had made her mark in the world, someone who had proven that you could be more than what people expected of you. The day of the ceremony was a grand affair. The village square was decorated with colorful banners, and people had traveled from neighboring towns to witness the celebration. Nandipa's heart swelled with emotion as she stood in the center of it all, surrounded by the people who had once doubted her. The village chief gave a speech, praising Nandipa for her perseverance and determination. "You have shown us that greatness can come from even the most humble of beginnings," he said, "and for that, we are proud to call you one of our own." Nandipa smiled, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude. She realized that despite everything, Umzima was still a part of her, and in some way, the village had helped shape her into the woman she had become. Chapter 17. The Unseen Threat. Just as everything seemed to be going perfectly, a new challenge emerged, one that threatened to destroy everything Nandipa had worked for. A rival bakery in Johannesburg, owned by a powerful and influential family, began spreading rumors that Nandipa's sweet potato tarts were made with inferior ingredients. They claimed that she wasn't using authentic recipes and that her success was built on lies. The rumors quickly spread, and sales at Nandipa's bakery began to decline. She tried to ignore the gossip at first, but it became impossible when she received a letter from the city's health department, stating that they had received complaints and were launching an investigation into her bakery. Nandipa was devastated. She had built her bakery on honesty and tradition, and now her reputation was being tarnished by baseless accusations. Chapter 18. Fighting Back. Nandipa wasn't about to let her business crumble without a fight. She hired a lawyer to investigate the rival bakery and uncovered proof that they had been bribing health inspectors to shut down her bakery. Armed with this information, Nandipa took her case to the media, exposing the corruption and clearing her name. The public rallied behind her, and her bakery's reputation was restored. In fact, the scandal ended up working in her favor. People admired how she had stood up against the powerful family, and her bakery became even more popular than before. Nandipa had faced yet another obstacle, but once again, she had emerged victorious. Chapter 19. The Fashion Icon. With her bakery thriving and her modeling career at an all-time high, Nandipa was finally living the life she had always dreamed of. She was walking runways in Paris and Milan. Her name was known in fashion circles around the world, and her sweet potato tarts were a hit across South Africa. But more than that, Nandipa had become an icon, a symbol of perseverance, resilience, and the power of believing in yourself. She had proven that you didn't need to fit into the mold that society created for you to achieve success. You just needed to stay true to who you were. As she looked back on her journey, Nandipa felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had come from a small village where people told her she would never make it, and now she was living a life beyond her wildest dreams. Chapter 20. The Legacy. Years passed, and Nandipa's story continued to inspire people from all walks of life. She expanded her bakery business, opening locations in cities around the world, and she launched her own fashion line, a collection of clothing inspired by her village's heritage, blending modern styles with traditional African designs. But no matter how successful she became, Nandipa never forgot where she came from. She frequently returned to Umzima, not as a celebrity, but as the same girl who used to practice her runway walk on the dusty village paths. She used her platform to give back to the community, sponsoring young girls with dreams as big as hers and helping them find their own paths. Nandipa's journey had been full of twists and turns, but she had made it, and in the end, she had shown the world that beauty, success, and greatness could come from anywhere, even from a small village girl who made the best sweet potato tarts in the world.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through the heart of African storytelling. If these tales inspired or moved you, make sure to check out our other videos to keep the adventure alive. Don't miss out on future stories. Hit the subscribe button and join our growing community. Let's continue exploring these rich, powerful stories together. Your support means everything, and we can't wait to share more with you. God bless.